Today isn't about a single story. Today's about comparison. We're looking at 3 different situations where someone crossed a line in 3 very different ways that situation played out afterward. One man built a defense so immovable it broke a bulldozer. One teenager caught in a storm of entitlement had a neighbor hit record at the perfect moment. And one husband, after a threat that changed everything, began methodically planning an exit no one else can see. Different people, different settings, different responses. As you listen, don't just focus on what happened, pay attention to how it was handled, where each story turns, and what kind of outcome actually followed. Because at the end, we're putting all 3 side by side and deciding which one truly delivered. Petty Revenge Generational Edition. The previous owner built a mailbox so over-engineered it survived everything, even a bulldozer. I grew up on a country road about a mile outside of town, the kind of place where nothing much ever changed and everyone knew everyone else's business, whether they wanted to or not. It was quiet, dark at night, and just far enough from town that people assumed there were no consequences for stupid behavior. Every few years, like clockwork, we'd get a new crop of idiot teenagers who thought it would be hilarious to pile into a pickup truck, drive down the road late at night, and smash mailboxes with baseball bats. It was a rite of passage for them, apparently. Most houses lost a mailbox or 2 before the kids got either bored, scared, or finally got caught. Ours was different. For reasons no one ever fully understood, they always stopped at our mailbox. The mailbox itself had history. The previous owner of the property had gotten fed up with replacing flimsy aluminum boxes after one too many late-night drive-bys, so instead of buying another standard mailbox, he built his own. Not a reinforced one, not a sturdier one. He built a mailbox out of welded half-inch steel plate, shaped like a little birdhouse, complete with a peaked roof and a flag welded on the side. It was painted red and white, and if you looked closely, you could see scars under the paint where people had tried and failed to destroy it. There were dents from baseball bats, a crease from where someone had clipped it with a car mirror, and even a scrape where someone once tried hitting it with a board. The mailbox had won every single time. What no one outside our family realized was that the box itself wasn't the real trap. The post wasn't wood. It wasn't a metal pole from the hardware store. The previous owner had used a 12-foot steel I-beam as the post, sunk 8 feet deep into the ground, and packed in solid with concrete. From the road, it looked like a normal mailbox. From the inside, it was basically a small, immovable monument disguised as rural infrastructure. If you hit it, you weren't breaking the mailbox, you were challenging physics. For years, the mailbox stood there undefeated, and eventually the kids stopped trying. Either word got around or enough trucks went home missing side mirrors and taillights that the joke lost its appeal. Everything was peaceful until one summer afternoon when a road crew showed up to do some maintenance along the shoulder of the road. They were widening the ditch slightly and grading the edge when one of the operators misjudged the distance and clipped the mailbox with a bulldozer. The mailbox didn't move, the bulldozer did. The impact dented the blade and knocked the mailbox slightly crooked, just enough that it leaned a few degrees off center. The crew shut everything down immediately and came over to apologize, clearly expecting my dad to be furious. He walked out, looked at the mailbox, looked at the bulldozer, and shrugged. He said it was fine and that it had taken worse hits over the years. All he asked was whether they could straighten it back up so it wasn't leaning. That's when things got interesting. The crew hooked a chain around the mailbox and attached it to the bulldozer, planning to pull it upright. When the operator started applying pressure, the mailbox didn't budge. The chain went taut, the bulldozer strained, and nothing happened. They backed up, readjusted the chain, and tried again, this time with more force. The bulldozer lurched forward slightly, instead, tires digging into the dirt while the mailbox stayed exactly where it was. You could actually see the moment realization hit them. The operator shut the machine down and got out, staring at the mailbox with a confused expression. The foreman walked over, hands on his hips, and asked what in the hell that thing was anchored to. My dad just smiled and told them he honestly wasn't sure, but that the previous owner had liked things solid. They decided to try one more time, bracing the bulldozer differently and rechaining higher up on the post. This time when they pulled, the mailbox finally moved. Not up, but out. Foot by foot, the I-beam began emerging from the ground like something out of a cartoon. The concrete footing came with it, an enormous chunk of gray cement clinging stubbornly to the steel. The bulldozer hit its pulling limit before the post was even halfway out, forcing them to stop, rebrace, and chain it again. The longer it went on, the quieter the crew got, until they were all just standing there watching in disbelief as more and more steel came out of the earth. By the time the post was fully exposed, everyone was laughing. The mailbox wasn't just set deep, it was absurdly overbuilt. 8 feet of steel buried and encased like it was meant to survive a small apocalypse. The foreman shook his head and said he'd never seen anything like it in his career. They reset the post, packed fresh concrete around it, straightened the mailbox perfectly, and promised they'd give it a wider berth in the future. After that, the mailbox stood straighter than ever. The real genius wasn't just building it tough, it was building it to look normal. The previous owner understood that the best defense is often hidden in plain sight, letting arrogance and assumption do the work for him. The mailbox didn't fight back, it just existed, immovably, and let every challenger defeat themselves. We lived there for years afterward, and not once did anyone try to smash it again. No kids, no trucks, no late-night thumps or broken bats left in the ditch. Whether the road crew told the story around town or someone learned the hard way and spread the warning, I don't know. What I do know is that the mailbox stayed exactly where it was, straight, solid, and quietly undefeated. It was still there every morning when we checked the mail, still anchored to 8 feet of steel and concrete, and still very obviously not worth testing. That mailbox never moved again. And our second story. My wife crossed a line I can't unsee. Everyone tells me to get over it. I'm quietly planning my escape instead. About a year ago, I was out running errands. My wife was asleep. The kids were playing. It was a Sunday. She finally woke up at 11:30. She called and asked me where I was. I shared my location. I was in Home Depot, or next door at the diner eating. I was 30 minutes away. She demanded I come home right that second. Basically upset she woke up and I wasn't home. I'd been up since 6:30 doing errands, exercising, getting the kids settled. I left out at 10 a.m. I take care of the kids mainly because I have a flexible schedule. My wife works part-time. I make 2 times more than her also. Well, I take an hour to get home. She starts calling, yelling at me, saying I'm worthless, and if I don't want to be around the family, she's going to take the kids and leave. Ever since then, me knowing how family courts are, I felt like I'm living with an assassin. She has the target on me and is just waiting to pull the trigger. I told her numerous times her statements and threats that day highly affected me. I've been to therapy and told my therapist. My wife, my friends, and parents all told me I need to get over it and I'm being too sensitive. Obviously, my wife was just upset and apologized. Even my therapist said she apologized. Why isn't that enough? Well, it's been a year. I'm still not over it. Everyone, including my wife, are acting like everything's great. We just took a week vacation in February as a family. I was there, but I feel like I can't even openly speak to my wife anymore because battle lines have been drawn. Am I the a-hole for holding my wife's statements a year later and unable to forgive her? Am I acting like everything is fine? To avoid interacting with her, I took a second job in the evening after the kids get home from school and finish their homework. So she thinks I'm just busy, not avoiding her. It's about a fundamental breach of trust and safety. When she weaponized the kids and threatened to leave, it changed the relationship from a partnership to a guarded negotiation. Your reaction, taking a second job to avoid her, isn't pettiness, it's self-preservation. Edit. Our kids are elementary age, 7 and 9. The kids basically have their own floor with a bedroom, bathroom, and playroom. My office is next to their bedroom. I have our house wired up with cameras everywhere but our bedroom. I have a phone system in our house that our kids can direct dial us anytime with a push of a button. My wife has worked part-time since our kids were born, but I can control my hours and schedule. So that's why I provide the supermajority of the child care. I always wake up early, usually 5:30 or 6. I go to bed about 11:30 or midnight. I have a couple jobs and run a family business. I said I out-earn 2 times my wife, but that's just from my 9 to 5. All in, it's more like 4 to 1 or 5 to 1. When our kids were way younger, I often took them with me to conduct business. I don't as much anymore, but they come with me to my second job most evenings. Last spring was when I started leaving them home to run around in the morning. Honestly, it was more fall 2022. My wife typically won't wake up unless she has to work, getting up on a non-work day between 10 a.m. and noon, regardless of the day of week. She goes to sleep between 11 p.m. and 3 a.m. I wanted to talk to a lawyer, and 2 business associates said they won't give me the name of a lawyer because I'm overreacting. I talked to a couple of people older than me, both male and female, and they all keep telling me I need to move on and get over it. I have a whole deck of cards to play before I call a lawyer. My buddy, who's 55, hung up on me when I asked him. He called me back a week later and said he would drive to meet with a lawyer if I still wanted to. We live in a large metro, but a small affluent suburb, the type of place that everyone is very well connected. I took a vacation with my buddy last year and we ran into my neighbor in the airport. By the time I returned home a few days later, people at my kid's school knew I went out of town and knew my buddy's name. I normally walk the same route every day with our dog. I had a foot injury and couldn't walk for 2 weeks. I was in the local pharmacy and some random lady asked if I was doing okay. She hadn't seen me walking, and she knows what time to leave for work based on when I walk by the park near her house. LOL. She's threatened to leave me several times. We've been together almost 20 years, but I always felt she's just acting out or blowing smoke. She put our children in the mix with this threat. I can admit she hasn't made a threat like that since last year. I think she knows she overstepped big time. But I can't help but feel I'm going to get ambushed one day. Also, I went on a couple of websites of divorce lawyers in our state, and they have calculators on them for alimony and child support. If she pulls the trigger on this, I'm losing big. We do have a post-nuptial agreement that a lawyer created. I even talked to a buddy about renting a studio out of the building he's constructing, maybe to just sleep somewhere else while I figure all this out. Everyone's telling me to either suck it up or pay up for my freedom. My therapist in August asked me point blank, do I still want to be married? I told him I don't know, but I have done some rough calculations on what that would cost. The number's so big, I don't even know if it's worth it. He told me he was in a similar position 15 to 20 years ago. He still got divorced. He still had to pay. It's just money. He said he waited until his youngest turned 18, but he started planning his exit about 8 years prior, which that's the only advice anyone is giving me. Just wait my wife out. This one's different. There's no instant payoff and no clean resolution. The turning point is the moment children are used as leverage. That permanently changes the rules of the relationship. From that point on, everything becomes guarded instead of cooperative. And our last story. Entitled neighbor learned the hard way that assaulting a disabled person is a bad idea, especially when filmed. I'm an 18-year-old guy, disabled and in constant pain. I rely on painkillers just to function day to day, and anxiety is something I live with all the time. Confrontation's especially hard for me. Stress hits me fast and hard, both mentally and physically, so I actively avoid it whenever I can. That matters here because I didn't go looking for trouble. I was just trying to walk my dog. This happened on an otherwise normal day. I took my German Shepherd out for a quick walk to the mailbox. It's only a few houses down from mine. The only real issue on the route is one particular house where my entitled neighbor lives. I'll call her EN. She's one of those parents who believes her kids can do no wrong, the kind who treats the entire neighborhood like an extension of her yard. I'd already had issues with her before. She lets her kids run through other people's yards, throw rocks, scream at animals, and when anyone complains, she waves it off with, "Kids will be kids." Her own dog growls at every animal that passes, but apparently rules only apply to everyone else. I kept my distance because I didn't want drama. That day, while I was at the mailbox, I could hear kids playing somewhere down the street. They were far enough away that I didn't think much of it. My dog was still young at the time, basically a puppy, energetic and curious, but not aggressive. He needed to pee, so I turned around and started heading home. That's when the kids came around the corner. There were several of them, including Ian's kid. They immediately noticed my dog and started running around us, yelling, laughing, circling closer. I stopped walking and tightened my grip on the leash. My hands were already full, my pain was flaring, and my anxiety spiked. I positioned myself so my dog stayed beside me, trying to keep him calm. The kids didn't stop. One ran behind us, another darted in front, one walked past close enough that I could feel my heart pounding. They were teasing him, waving their arms, making noises, My dog barked and pulled slightly, clearly wanting to play and confused by the chaos. He wasn't lunging or snapping, just reacting like a puppy surrounded by screaming kids. Then Ian's kid suddenly started crying. 1 second he was laughing, the next he was screaming like he'd been attacked. Ian came flying out of her house. She didn't ask what happened. She didn't look. She didn't check her kid. She just charged straight at me, yelling that I needed to control my dog and screaming that I needed to stay the hell away from her children. Her kids were still blocking the sidewalk, still crowding us. Across the street, my neighbor Bob was outside washing his car. He saw the whole thing start and instinctively pulled out his phone. Before I could even process what was happening, Ian grabbed my arm hard. She twisted it painfully right where my joints already give me trouble, and at the same time grabbed my dog by the collar. Bob's phone was already up, filming everything. You could hear him say, "Hey, what are you doing?" as she started dragging me toward my house. This is the turning point. Bob hitting record changed everything. Without that video, it would have been your word against hers, and her story might have won. That small act of witnessing and proof made sure the truth couldn't be twisted. I was trying not to fall, trying to keep my dog from panicking, trying not to scream as pain shot up my arm. Ian was yelling the entire time, calling me irresponsible, dangerous, accusing me of letting my dog attack her kid. In a moment of pure fear and adrenaline, I yelled, "You need to handle your kids better." That was it. That was all I said. She finally let go near the edge of my driveway, still screaming. Bob kept filming as she backed away, still shouting threats. My arm was already turning red, and I was shaking so badly I could barely hold the leash. I got inside my house and collapsed. The panic attack hit hard. Chest tight, hands numb, breathing shallow. I genuinely thought I was going to pass out. Outside, Bob called the police. When officers arrived, Bob was still standing in his driveway, phone in hand. He showed them the video immediately. It clearly showed Ian grabbing my arm, twisting it, grabbing my dog, and dragging me while I tried to pull away. Ian tried to claim I had attacked her kid. The video shut that down instantly. The officers came inside to speak to me. They were calm, patient, and took their time. They examined my arm, which was already bruising, and asked if I wanted to press charges. I said yes. They went back outside and put Ian in handcuffs. She started screaming, insisting the video was out of context, insisting I provoked her, insisting my dog was dangerous. One officer told her flatly that assault is assault, and being caught on video made it very clear. She was arrested on the spot. Her kids were taken inside by another adult. Animal control later issued warnings regarding her own dog. I didn't get in trouble. My dog didn't get in trouble. The video made sure of that. Since then, she avoids me completely. Their kids no longer play in other people's yards. The rock throwing stopped. The neighborhood is quieter. I still deal with anxiety. I still live with pain every day. But knowing that someone saw what happened, recorded it, and stood up for me mattered more than I can explain. When you put these three stories next to each other, the contrast is sharp. The mailbox story shows consequences designed long before conflict existed. The marriage story shows damage that lingers because there's no clear resolution. And the final story shows how documentation can collapse entitlement instantly. Same core issue, crossing boundaries, but three very different outcomes. The question isn't which story is most dramatic, it's which response actually worked. Now compare them directly. Which story handled the situation best? I'm waiting for you in the comments. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.